So now we talk about options and forwards. So these are again types of derivatives. In the case of the forwards, these are contracts between a buyer and seller, same as the options. In the case of the option, we mentioned that in the option, in the call and the put, the buyer has the right, but they don't have the obligation to buy or sell the quantity of the underlying asset at the fixed price. The seller is obligated to complete the transaction if they are told to do so by the buyer. So that's how the options work. In the case of the forwards, both parties obligate themselves to trade the underlying asset at the agreed upon price. So in this case, both of them do agree on the price, and both are obligated to go through. It doesn't mean that one has the right. They're both obligated to go ahead with the trade. So an option has a right, and forwards, they have obligations. There's a trigger point known as the exercise price. Above or below that price, it has value at expiration. So in the option, there is like a maturity date, but in forwards, there's no trigger point. They develop value as soon as the market price changes. The purchase of an option requires an immediate payment. So remember, the premium that the buyer will pay the holder, that is a requirement there, but there's no money exchange in the case of the forwards or the futures. They are traded over the counter on those exchanges which are OTC. The OTC are mainly dominated by the banks and the financial institutions who trade directly with corporate clients. So so the main difference with the forward and the futures, like you mentioned before, forwards are on an exchange. Well, when forwards are traded on an exchange, it is called a futures. And the OTC market is 5 times bigger than the exchange market. So again, here the comparison between the exchange traded and the over-the-counter. Exchange traded ones are the futures, and this is the forwards. So as you can see here, that there's differences between these two. Here, the main difference is that here it is heavily regulated at the exchanges. Here it is much less regulated. And here in the exchange traded, the delivery rarely takes place. It's just they calculate what is the price difference and who pays what, and then they close out the position. But in the case of over the counter, they do have delivery. They do have to go ahead with the buying and the selling. And so the so in both cases there are gains and losses accrue on the day basis. In the case of the exchange traded, it's called marking to market, and here they are plus and minus at the end in the case of over the counter. So we'll take a look at this in more detail in the next slides. So forward, we said, is one where one party is obligated to buy and the other is obligated to sell a certain product. So the buyer does not have to pay the agreed upon price right away, nor does the seller deliver the underlying interest. The delivery and the payment takes place at a specified date in the future. This is known as the delivery date. And the delivery price is agreed upon when the contract is entered into. So the OTC equivalent of the futures can be customized, and it depends on the situation. So these are the forwards, and then the futures we said are on the exchange, and they are in a standardized form, and there's a bid and offer in the marketplace, and they are on or before a preset date in the future. What is the margin? Margin is how much money they have to put down, and so the original margin is required when the contract is started out. And then there's a maintenance margin. It's sort of like the equity ones we discussed about. There can be a margin call or a margin excess. So both ways, both cases situation here. And there's a marking to market. It's a daily settlement of gains and losses. So let's take a look at an example here of marking to market. So we have Greg, who's a buyer, and Layla, who's a short seller. The initial margin they put in is 2,000. So 2,000, each of them put in 2,000. And the maintenance margin is 1,500. So if the price of the futures goes up $200. So he's in the long position, it's going to go up $200. She's in the short, so it's going to go down $200. So now the futures drops $300. So from so now instead of 2200, it drops to 1900. And so this will go up by $300 because they will be going on the opposite level. If the price goes down to 1400, now there's a margin call of $100 because the maintenance margin is 1500. And this could be um, the short seller could have 2600 now. So this is the concept for the margin requirement. So please go ahead and do this example. 1000, 2000 is is what the buyer is buying, is putting down, and 2000 is what Kumar is putting down. So calculate if the future price changes, what is the seller and the buyer going to be obtaining.